Love knows no borders, and it does not stop at the labels the world creates. Where there is true love, there is the kingdom of heaven.
Identity is like a river. It flows, it changes, but its essence remains. Clinging to a fixed form is a source of suffering.
Come to me, all who are tired of being judged for who they are, for in my heart there are no conditions for love.
When we understand that all beings seek happiness and flee from suffering, we stop seeing differences and begin to see brothers and sisters.
Imagine for a moment that two of the most influential figures in human history sat down to talk like old friends. What would they think about the new ways we understand gender and sexuality in our time? What would they say about marriage equality, about diverse families, about the young people who dare to live their authentic truth? Today, in this space, Jesus of Nazareth and Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, share their reflections and invite us into deep dialogue and spiritual understanding conversation, where they pour out all their wisdom, each from their own perspective and point of view. Welcome to this sacred dialogue, where mutual respect and ancient wisdom illuminate the challenges of our times. Today we present
My dear brother Siddhartha, I see that in these times people are struggling deeply to define who they are. I see young people searching for words to describe their truest essence, their way of loving, their way of experiencing their bodies and souls. It reminds me of those days when crowds would follow me asking, "Who are you?" And I would answer that more important than knowing who I am is that they know who they are in the eyes of the Father. Tell me, how do you view this search for identity that seems so central in this century?
Ah, Jesus, what a profound insight. This search is at its core the same path we all walk, the desire to understand our true nature. But I see many getting lost in labels, believing that finding the perfect word to describe themselves will bring the peace they long for. In my teaching, I speak of anatta, the absence of a fixed self. Identity, like all things in existence, is in constant flow. A young person who today discovers love in one way may experience it differently tomorrow. Is that not also an expression of the freedom you preach? The freedom to be authentic without the chains of others' expectations.
Exactly, brother. When I said, "The truth will set you free," I was referring to that inner truth every soul knows about itself. I've seen how the world builds cages with its norms, especially about how someone should love or how they should express masculinity or femininity. But the love of the Father transcends these human constructs. I remember the Samaritan woman at the well, rejected for her gender, her past, her origin, and yet it was to her that I revealed my messianic nature. Don't you think the same happens today with those who are marginalized because of their gender identity or sexual orientation?
Jesus, you touch the very heart of human suffering. In my teachings, I identify that much of our pain comes from the desire to be accepted, to belong. I see mothers and fathers rejecting their children when they reveal their true identity. I see young people contemplating ending their lives because they find no place in the world for the way they love or the way they are. This suffering doesn't come from their identity itself, but from the rejection they face. Compassion teaches us that when we see someone suffering for being who they are, our natural response should be to embrace them, not to judge.
Yes, my friend. And it pains me deeply when I see people use my name to justify that rejection. When I walked the earth, I dined with prostitutes, tax collectors, with all those whom society considered unworthy. My message was always one of radical inclusion. Let the one without sin cast the first stone. Who are we to judge how someone experiences love or their own identity? The greatest commandment is to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. No asterisks, no exceptions. But tell me, how can we help families struggling with these issues find understanding?
The key lies in the practice of mindfulness and compassion. When a parent reacts with rejection, it is often because fear has clouded their vision. Fear of the unknown, fear of social judgment, fear for their child's future. But if they can pause, take a deep breath, and truly look at their child, not at their fears or expectations, but at the person in front of them, they will see the same being they have always loved, someone worthy of unconditional love. The practice of loving kindness meditation can transform these closed hearts.
Brother Siddhartha, I'm fascinated by how in this century people have created new words to describe experiences that may have always existed but had no name. Words like non-binary, pansexual, asexual. At first, some may feel overwhelmed by so much diversity of terms. How can we help people see that behind every label is simply a human being searching for love and understanding?
What a beautiful question, Jesus. Words are like fingers pointing at the moon. They help guide the way, but we must not mistake them for the moon itself. These new words are tools that help people communicate their inner experience, especially those who for centuries felt invisible or misunderstood. A young person identifying as non-binary is simply saying, "My experience of gender doesn't fit the two traditional boxes I've been given." Isn't this similar to when you challenge the religious categories of your time? Speaking of a God of love, beyond rigid rules.
Absolutely. When I said the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, I was teaching that structures must serve people, not the other way around. The gender and sexuality categories we've inherited are tools that can be helpful, but when they become prisons that limit the authentic expression of the soul, then they must evolve. I see parents asking me, "How should I refer to my son who is now my daughter?" And my answer is simple. With the same love you've always had, now enriched with the wisdom of knowing more clearly who they truly are.
And here we find a beautiful paradox. By accepting more labels, we actually free ourselves from the tyranny of the few we once had. When there were only two options, many felt like strangers in their own skin. Now with more possibilities, each person can find a description that honors their unique experience. But always remembering, the label is not the person. It is just one way to communicate an inner reality that is infinitely richer and more complex.
Siddhartha, I want us to speak of love itself. In this century, I see people redefining not only how they see themselves, but also how they love. Same-sex couples raising children with a devotion that rivals any traditional family. People who love regardless of gender. Others who find fulfillment in singleness or non-traditional forms of relationship. How can we help the world see that authentic love transcends the forms it takes?
Jesus, true love has 4 qualities I teach: loving kindness, compassion, shared joy, and equanimity. These qualities do not depend on the gender of the one who gives or receives them. I have seen 2 men raising an adopted child with a tenderness that could move the heavens to tears. I have seen a woman loving another woman with a loyalty that honors the sacred. Love is known by its fruits. Does it generate well-being? Does it reduce suffering? Does it foster growth? If the answer is yes, then we are in the presence of something sacred, regardless of its form.
Yes, you will know them by their fruits. A family led by 2 same-sex parents, raising children with compassion, honesty, and service, is doing the work of the kingdom. A transgender person who, by living authentically, inspires others to be brave with their own truth, is being a light of the world. The problem arises when we focus on the outer form instead of the spiritual content. But tell me, how can we address the genuine fears some people have about these social changes?
Fear is natural in the face of the unknown, and compassion must include compassion for those who fear. We cannot change hearts with arguments or confrontation. We can only offer our peaceful presence and example. When someone personally knows a diverse family, when they see their everyday love, their normal struggles, their simple joys, fear naturally dissolves. Ignorance is healed through direct experience, not sermons.
Brother, I worry when I see some young people feel they must choose between their faith and their authentic identity. I receive prayers from youth saying, "Jesus, can I be gay and be Christian? Can I be transgender and still love you?" My heart breaks because the question itself reveals how much harm we've caused by separating human love from divine love. How can we heal this wound?
What unnecessary pain, Jesus. In my teaching, authentic spirituality never asks us to deny fundamental aspects of who we are. On the contrary, it invites us to integrate all aspects of our being into a deeper understanding. A young person struggling with their sexual identity and their faith is experiencing what we call second arrow suffering, the additional pain we create by resisting our reality. Spiritual practice should relieve that suffering, not increase it.
Exactly. When I said, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened," I placed no conditions. I didn't say, "Only heterosexuals," or "Only those who fit traditional gender roles." The exhaustion many feel comes precisely from trying to be someone they are not, just to please others. Freedom comes when they can be fully authentic before God and find that they are loved exactly as they are. Don't you think a faith that requires us to deny fundamental parts of ourselves has strayed from the path?
Without a doubt, true spiritual practice leads us toward greater authenticity, not deeper repression. When I see a young person meditating on their true nature and discovering they love in a way different from what they were taught, I celebrate that awakening. It is like watching someone remove a mask that was never theirs to wear. Spirituality should be the safest space for this exploration, not the most dangerous.
Siddhartha, as we look at this transforming world, what vision do you have for the future? How do you imagine a society where the diversity of identities and ways of loving is not merely tolerated but celebrated?
I imagine a world where a child can grow up without fear of expressing who they truly are, where schools teach that families come in many beautiful forms, where places of worship are sanctuaries of unconditional love, where no one has to choose between authenticity and safety. But this world will not come by decree. It will come when enough hearts open, one at a time. What is your vision, brother?
I dream of the day when there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, expands to include all expressions of being human. A world where love is measured not by who you love or how you identify, but by how much love you give. Where churches, mosques, and temples are beacons of inclusion. Where every person can proudly say, "I am exactly who God meant me to be."
And as we await that day, our practice is simple: to see the inherent dignity in every being, to offer compassion where there is suffering, and to remember that diversity is not a threat to unity. It is its most beautiful expression. Each unique perspective is like a color in a mandala, necessary for the beauty of the whole womb.
Brother, I believe we've only just begun this conversation. There is so much more to explore about how love transcends all human categories. But for now, what final message would you like to share with those listening?
Let compassion begin with yourself. If you are struggling with your identity, be gentle with yourself. If you are afraid of the changes in the world, observe that fear with kindness. And remember, we are all walking the same path toward awakening and love.
Dear brothers and sisters who have joined us in this dialogue, I invite you to reflect. In what moments of your life have you felt you had to choose between being authentic and being accepted? How can you be a source of unconditional love for someone going through that struggle? Remember that every act of acceptance, every embrace you offer to someone who is different, every time you choose compassion over judgment, you are building the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Love knows no borders, and you are its ambassadors. Go in peace, and may your light shine so others may find their own path to authenticity.
And I leave you with this reflection. In your daily encounters with human diversity, can you see beyond labels to the heart beating underneath? Can you remember that every person you meet is doing the best they can with the understanding they have? Practice loving kindness, especially toward those who are different from you. Meditate on the interconnection that binds us all, beyond gender, sexual orientation, or identity. And when you find yourself judging, take a deep breath and ask, how can I respond from compassion instead of fear? May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings live authentically.